As this year winds down and we're only a few weeks away from 2021, in this video I'm gonna show you how well these two old GTX 770s perform in SLI. But before that, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe down below, and thank you for watching. Alright, so before I begin with this video, I would like to ask everyone for a small favor. Go ahead and hit that like button down below. It really helps to grow the channel, and I really appreciate it. Also, if you're new to my channel, go ahead and hit the sub and the bell notification, that way you can stay tuned to my latest videos. So let's begin. As you can see right here, I have two old GTX 770s. These are the founder editions, and they are the 2GB versions, which I'm going to run in SLI to find out how well they still perform at the end of 2020 going into 21, to see if they could even come close to some of the performance on some of the newer graphic cards that are on the market. So this specific model here consists of 1046 megahertz on the base clock, 1085 megahertz on the boost clock. Also, as I mentioned before, these are the 2GB versions, and the memory interface is GDDR5. Memory interface bandwidth is 256-bit. Also, it does support the PCI Express 3.0, and it does require a hefty power supply just for one of these 600-watt power supply, along with an 8-pin and a 6-pin connection. So in order to run these bad boys in SLI, probably need 800 and up power supply, but I'm not even going to chance it. With the rig that I'll be using, I'm going to probably use a 1200 watt power supply just to get the best possible results out of this. So if you're thinking about getting this card used, which you should be able to pick it up around 60 to 80 bucks on the used market, do keep in mind that you do need a pretty good power supply, so in some cases it might not be even worth it. But that's really not what I want to test here today. I do want to test out some games that do support SLI and see how well it performs. Now there's quite a few games that do support SLI and some games that do require Nvidia Inspector, and that's what I'm going to play around with to really get the most juice out of these bad boys. So yeah, without further ado, now I'm going to jump into the rig that I'm going to be using for this test and show you how these cards look inside, and then go over the specs of the rig that I'll be testing these cards with. So stay tuned for that. And there it is. This is the beast I'll be using to test out these two old GTX 770s running in SLI. Now this is a full tower, big boy build, and for a while this was my most powerful rig. It consists of an i7 8700K running at 5 gigs. Also, it has 16 gigs of DDR4 running at 3600 megahertz, along with 1200 watt power supply. Plenty of power to run this setup here. As you could see, I am using a high bandwidth SLI adapter here, which has a nice little feature. It has 4 colors to switch the LED lights, and I'm using the green one to match up with the LEDs on the two cards. And I'll tell you what, for old cards like that, it has a nice LED across. That's really nice, and it still looks good at this year. Now also, I do want to say that I wish I had the 4 gig versions of these cards. I think I would have got a better result, especially on 4K. So the issue with running these two gigabytes in SLI mode, yeah, we're gonna see some good results on 1080p or 1440p if I'll decide to do that, and it'll run 4K. But anything over medium settings on 4K, it'll freeze up or crash usually, because it's just not enough VRAM on that. So that's the only thing that sucks. I wish I could get the 4 gigs. Now those are a bit more rare, and it took me a while to get 2 of these. I had one laying around. I just picked one up recently for like 50 bucks. to complete this project here. And you know what, I'm pretty happy with the results. Overall, I think it's running pretty good, and you'll be surprised, I think, to see how well it runs. Now, of course, I'll be using only SLI compatible games for this test. Either they'll be naturally SLI compatible, or I may use for some games the Nvidia Inspector, which is nothing wrong with that. For some of you guys not aware, the Nvidia Inspector is a good tool to get some of the games to run that are not naturally SLI compatible, just to see what you could do with your hardware and push it really to the limits. Now also I want to talk about the SLI now in the end of 2020 going into 2021. For years, a lot of people saying that SLI is dead, it's not worth it, should move on, but I really disagree, and you'll see that in my videos that there's plenty of games that do support it, and when they do support it, there is really big advantage. And remember one thing, with the most powerful Nvidia card on the market right now, the RTX 3090, what could beat a single RTX 3090? Well, two 3090 RTXs running in SLI mode. And I'm telling you, for the people who could afford such hardware, they will have two of them, just to have those bragging rights, just to have the highest FPS for the games that do support, and there is quite a few. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Without further ado, let me jump into some games and show you the results, so stay tuned. Now here we have Battlefield 5. This is a perfect example of SLI working at its best. Now in order to get the SLI to work with this game, unfortunately you do need Nvidia Inspector. Now that's very easy to do, it's free, and I also made a video about the SLI profile for this game a couple of years back, so be sure to check it out on my channel if you don't know how to do that yet. But once you do that, it just takes a few minutes to do, very easy. Then you'll get the SLI to work on this game, and it works perfect without any issues, and really this is the ideal performance you want to expect when you are utilizing SLI in some of the games that do support it, or it may need the SLI Nvidia Inspector fix. So let's take a look at our settings here. I am going to do all three resolutions, 1080p, 1440p, and 4K. We're going to start off with 1080p on ultra settings. And let's take a look. So let me go over all my settings and everything that I'm using here to get all this performance out and squeeze every little juice out of this system here. I have two GTX 770s. They're 2 gigabytes each, running in SLI. They are slightly overclocked by 100 megs on the core and 250 megahertz on the memory clock. I also have the fans blasting at 70% on both cards to keep it nice and cool. For the processor, I'm using the i7-8700K running at 5 gigs with hyperthread disabled. Also 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM running at 3600 megahertz. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the setup here. Of course, I have all the voltages and all the restrictions, you know, unlocked in the MSI Afterburner. That way the cards are sucking up as much power as they need to get the best possible performance. That's very important to really, you know, unleash everything you have when it comes to the graphics power. There's a lot of videos about that, how to use the MSI Afterburner the correct way. And this is a light overclock. Anything higher for these old cards, I think, has a pretty, you know, significant issue as far as flickering, and then there's, you know, some issues on the screen. So that's pretty much most you could expect from these cards as far as overclock. So yeah, that's how it looks. Now, of course, I really do wish that all the games support SLI, but unfortunately, the game developers, they're not gonna have that with all the new modern games out there, and for the obvious reasons. That's because they don't want people to use a bunch of old cards like this for years and years and years to play the games without upgrading to something new, and that's understandable. But just to showcase that after all these years, these over 7-year-old graphics cards are still kind of holding their own in some of these games. Not bad at all. Very enjoyable. Now, of course, I'm not telling you to go get these 2 old cards and put them SLI for your ultimate rig. Not at all. There's so many better possibilities than this. But just to see, you know, just to see how these old cards run together, it's pretty amazing in my opinion. All right, let's jump into 1440p resolution now. Now, of course, I did all these tests before, so in order to get the best results, we're gonna go down to high settings for the 1440p. Because if you go to ultra settings, it becomes a little bit unplayable, in my opinion. Here you have it. Oh, wow, there it is. It's alive. So we are on high settings, 1440p. It's still getting pretty good FPS. Really, this will be your ideal settings, I think, for best resolution to FPS ratio. High settings, 1440p. You know, averaging around 60 FPS. I mean, what else do you want for these old cards? Okay, now let's jump into 4K resolution. I promised you 4K in this one, and that's what we're gonna get. Now, when it comes to 4K, we're gonna have to lower this down to medium. Otherwise, the game becomes unplayable. Okay. Okay, let's just check that again. Medium and 4K resolution. Okay, here we go. There you go. Now we're really pushing this bad boy to the limit. Alright, let's wrap this up. I'm just going to run through this crazy battlefield really quick. With 4K medium settings, And we're still maintaining about 30 FPS average, which is fantastic. And it looks good. Look at that. Through the explosions and all. Temperatures are good. Visuals are good. Yeah, that's pretty much it. You have seen it today. Two 770s pushed to the limits. Looking good. Alright, let's go into the next game, so stay tuned. Ah yes, the good old Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Now this is another great example of SLI working at its best. Now this particular game does support the SLI natively without any fixes. You just have to make sure you're using DirectX 12 on this one. Let's take a look at the options. Okay, as you could see, it shows the GTX 770. We are on full screen, DirectX 12, and I am using the high settings for this test. Seem to be the best settings for the best results. And let's take a look what we got here. Oh yeah, that's pretty good. The game looks good. Got enough FPS here, that's for sure. She's all by herself.
Could be useful.
Jonah! Can anybody hear me?
I'll keep this for later.
Hello? Anyone?
Where are they? I have to find them.
Yeah, they left you. Oh yeah. Wow, the jungle looks nice. As you can see, we're averaging about 70 FPS. That's really fantastic for a game like this. Anyone knows that this game is pretty hard to run. You really need to spend a lot of money on a really expensive system to run this game at a good FPS.
Someone's over there. I have to get to them.
All right, let's jump into the 1440p resolution here. Let's see. Let's see if we can maintain the same high settings. May have to go down to medium for it to be playable, but you never know. Okay, we're at around 30 FPS. I really want to be higher, so we're going to go to medium settings. Let's take a look here. Alright, let's go to preset. Go to medium with motion blur off. Everything else stays the same. Let's see how that runs. Alright, so a little bit more FPS. Still enough for a good gameplay. And I would say that's pretty much the limit. Whoopah. Ooh. Yeah, so it looks like medium settings on 1440p is going to be just right. And I will not attempt the 4K resolution on this. I'm sure it'll work on the lowest settings. Oh, of course. Resident Evil 3 Remake is another excellent game to showcase the SLI performance. Now let's take a look. Now with this game, you do need to use Nvidia Inspector, and there is a profile for that. I also have a video for that if you want to know how to activate the SLI profile for this game. And you do have to use DirectX 11 along with that. So these are my settings on normal rendering mode. These are the presets that I'm using on 1080p. And that's the kind of FPS we're getting here. Really good and smooth gameplay, no issues.
Joe, it's me again.
We're survivors. We've got to get that train moving.
Oof. Whoop, ah. Alright, let's see what happens if we go to 1440p here. We're still getting good FPS here, wow. Wow, wow, wow. As you can see, 1440p is still pretty good here. Good FPS. Well, the question is, will 4K work on this, or will it crash? In theory, we have enough FPS at the settings on 1440p for it to work on 4K resolution. Of course, it'll be a lot less, but the question is, will it crash? So I'm gonna try to do that. If it crashes, then I'll end this part of the test on this resolution. So let's take a look. Wow, look at the ground, looks pretty cool. Alright, let's give it a shot. Will it work? Come on. Ooh, it took it. Unbelievable. Alright, let's review the settings again just to show you. These are the settings. I was using this on all the resolutions, 1080p, 1440p, and 4K. And looks like it grabbed. Wow. Pretty good. So there you have it. We're enjoying the game on 4K resolution. Let me see. I see something here really quick. Yep. Oba! Little sluggish, as you could see, but what do you expect? I think it's still somewhat playable. It really depends on your standards. I'm sure if you could tweak some settings, we could open up more FPS. But I'm gonna stay there because the visuals do look good. And it is working. Wow. Alright, well, that concludes the test for Resident Evil 3. Looks like I just have one more game left for this video, so stay tuned for that. Alright, so I'm gonna wrap up this video with the last game, which is Far Cry New Dawn. And yes, this game does support SLI natively. You do not need any additional software like Nvidia Inspector, and it works pretty good. So let's take a look at the settings. Right. 1080p full screen, ultra quality, everything maxed out with motion blur off and HD textures off. And these are the results I'm getting here. Not bad at all. As I'm sure you're well aware, out of all the games I tested in this video, this is the hardest one to run. And to get these kind of FPS on ultra settings on 1080p is still quite impressive. I will go into the 1440p, but I will not attempt 4K, as this game will crash or freeze up. So there are some limitations to these old cards. Now there are plenty other games that do support SLI natively, or just need that additional software, the Nvidia Inspector. Very easy to do. So I'm here to show you that SLI is not dead. It still works pretty good. And there are even some games that are still out there that I didn't have a chance to mess around with the Nvidia Inspector, but who knows. Throughout the years I did find out at least a few games with the Nvidia inspector, I was able to get them to work, so that's pretty good in my opinion. Alright, let's jump into the 1440p to finish this off. And we'll stay with the same quality. Ultra. If you take it down a notch, you'll get some more FPS. I will leave it at this for now. Still playable FPS here. Now please don't forget to comment down below. Let me know what you guys think of these results. I really appreciate your feedback. And might as well go to high preset here. Yeah, we'll go one notch lower. There it is. Now, I did forget to mention, you do see a bit of sluggishness in 1440p. That's one of the reasons I usually don't test it, but only because this specific monitor here, for some reason, it locks it at 30 hertz, and that's why it's like that. All the other resolutions are at 60. But the main focus is we have enough FPS for the game to be enjoyed at 1440p resolution here. Very playable, very enjoyable. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.